I'm being a little proactive here and just doing a full Eeveelutions deck to follow that Umbreon build. For those that don't want to limit themselves to just Umbreon, they want to experience full evolution coverage, having the potential to hit for as many weaknesses as possible. It would seem like eCard is kind of streamlined for Eevelutions because the Aquaplus Eevee has its charge up attack. If you hit heads on the coin flip, you can search your deck for any energy card and attach it to Eevee. It's great energy acceleration if you can hit the coin flip, and it removes some of the worry of getting the particular energy you need for your chosen evolution. Professor Elm's training method makes it very simple to just search your deck for the evolution you have in mind and get it from deck to hand to playing field. It's also helpful that the evolutions have mostly colorless energy requirements, so your reliance on rainbow energy is minimized. All that being said, this deck is not good. It does not have enough resources and tools to really stand on its own as an archetype. That's why you see Eevee and its evolutions as support Pokemon in a bunch of other decks. That's why Umbreon has its own archetype, because that's the only evolution that can stand on its own. But I did want to take a shot with this deck. I wanted to stick with that theme of hitting for as many weaknesses as possible. Finding support Pokemon for this deck was a little tricky to stick with that theme and still support your Eevees. But yeah, let's get into the deck list. Let's see what we can brew up here. This deck is a lot easier to run if you know before you even draw your opening hand what type of deck your opponent is going to be using. Then that's really going to inform what your strategy is going to be from the get-go, what type of evolution you're going to be starting with and looking for. Eevee can actually be a very powerful start. If you hit heads on your coin flip for charge up, you're already starting the game ahead of your opponent. That energy acceleration is going to allow you to get off a 3 energy attack on your second turn, which most decks in eCard are not going to be able to do. They're not going to be able to match it, and they're not going to be able to combat it. Aside from the obvious playset of Eevee, we're also going to be running 2 copies of Umbreon since it is the strongest evolution, and it can attack for 3 colorless energy. So regardless of what energy you get attached to it, you're going to be able to attack with a very powerful attack. And if you get a darkness energy on there, you get the bonus of using Dark Moon as a power. 2 copies of Espeon as well. It has a very useful power as well for moving around energy, yanking them off of Pokemon that are about to be knocked out so that you can just play them from your hand onto another Pokemon. That can be especially helpful for those special energy cards like Rainbow Energy or Special Dark. A copy of Flareon for hitting Grass and Steel for weakness, and a copy of Vaporeon for hitting Fire weakness. The deck did need more basic Pokemon in it, and I just said, well, let's just go ahead and try to hit for Grass weakness too, because Jumpluff is a very easy line of Pokemon to just splash into a coverage deck. So we're going to be running 3 copies of Hoppip. If it has a Grass Energy attached, it has free retreat, which is really nice for if you start the game with it, but realize early on that you don't really want it in the active position. You'd rather have an Eevelution while you can just retreat it for free onto your bench as long as you do have that Grass Energy. Skiploom has the exact same Pokebody, so even as a stage 1, all you need is that singular Grass Energy attached. That's all you're really going to need for the entire evolution line, because Jumpluff attacks for 1 energy. Jumpluff also has free retreat built in. It can deal a fairly reasonable amount of damage for only 1 energy, and its Pokebody makes it a pretty good damage sponge to have in the active position. It's going to be sponging, dealing chip damage, all the while allowing you to power up your chosen evolutions on the bench. The other support line in this deck is going to be Clefable, for its ability to just trade a card in your hand for whatever energy type you want out of your deck. So the 2/2 Clefable line is going to add in Moonlight support, where whatever basic energy type you need out of your deck, you're going to have a way to get it. If you really want to put a fire energy on Flareon, but you've just got, water or grass energy in your hand, send that energy back to your deck, get a fire energy out, you're good to go. That way, if your Eevee does miss its early game charge up coin flip, you do have a backup in evolving into Clefable on turn 2 or 3, and having that built-in reliable energy search. The supporter base is going to be pretty basic for this build. Full playset of Pokemon Fan Club for grabbing basic Pokemon, and a full playset of Pet'em for grabbing your evolution cards. Same thing for draw power, where we will be utilizing Professor Oak's research, Underground Expedition, and Copycat. With Umbreon in this deck, Copycat isn't always ideal, as it does cut down on its ability to control and manage your opponent's hand, but that really only works for a more refined, focused strategy of a deck like pure Umbreon. With this deck, there's a little too much going on that you really just want to draw cards and have as many resources in hand as possible. Alternatively, you could include like a 2-2 Porygon 2 line, which I did try out, but the opportunity to actually use Porygon 2's power was limited. It works a lot better with Furret, and Furret didn't make very much sense for this deck. Clefable was the more obvious choice. Even with Clefable's power in this deck, I still included a couple copies of Energy Search, just to have another way to get the right energy at the right time. A couple copies of Switch just to move around your Eeveelutions as needed. Switch works really well with Jumpluff as well in getting out of special conditions, as you can switch into Jumpluff, free retreat it to the bench, to really just loop a Pokemon from active to bench to active again, for the purpose of getting rid of a special condition. With only one copy of Flareon and Vaporeon respectively, I also threw in a copy of Town Volunteers just in case one of those gets knocked out, you really need it again, you have a way to get it back into your deck. And also one copy of Undersea Ruins, that way every now and then you can actually pull off a bit of a surprise against your opponent by going, oh well, you thought you were up against a Vaporeon, but I'm going to devolve it, evolve it into an Umbreon, attach a Darkness Energy, now it's a completely different beast that you're up against. 4 copies of Rainbow Energy to assist with the energy coverage, but also it's a pretty great way to activate Jumpluff's Pokebody by placing that 1 damage counter on there. 3 copies of the special Darkness Energy for your Umbreons, getting that extra 10 damage on your attacks, but also activating Dark Moon as a Pokepower so you can manage your opponent's hand and try to limit their usable resources. The rest of the deck is going to be filled out with the basic energy cards required for your evolutions. It's going to be 2 of each, so 2 Psychic, 2 Fire, 2 Water, and 2 Grass. One thing I will say about this deck is that it is pretty versatile in establishing a win condition early on. Depending on your opening hand, sometimes you go full Umbreon strategy, where it's dealing damage, trapping your opponent, managing their hand. Sometimes you just go full Jumpluff, just like, yep, Jumpluff's doing great, it's hitting those coin flips, doing a lot of damage. I'm just going to use these Eevelutions as backup and for coverage. I guess being a mixed bag isn't always a bad thing. The structure of your personal build within Eevelutions is also going to be heavily based on whatever you're up against and what you hold important for the metagame. So if you are sick and tired of going up against Beedrill and Vileplume and Scizor, then yeah, you're going to go a little heavier on the Flareons in this deck. Maybe less importance placed on the Umbreon and Espeon. In that vein, you may be wondering why I chose not to include Skyridge Jolteon. Well, I don't like it. That's why. I don't think that its Thunder Spark attack really works with what this deck is trying to accomplish. I like Jumpluff a lot better as an attacker, and I was really just looking for an excuse to fit Jumpluff into something, because it also can't stand on its own, it needs a partner. And melding these ideas together into one more singular focus of just attacking for low energy for coverage accomplished more in playtesting than anything else I tried. If you find yourself leaning harder into Umbreon every game, then it probably would be smart to replace those copycats with Desert Shaman to increase the amount of pressure you are exerting on your opponent's resources. The ultimate takeaway here is that in eCard, coverage isn't an archetype. In most metagames it isn't. It's more of something you tech into an existing archetype as the need arises. That is kind of the point of rogue decks, and now that we've kind of reached the end of top tier decks within eCard, we're going to be moving more into the territory of just fun decks or rogue ideas. I'm excited to hear any ideas you guys have about how to make Eevelutions work, or what the ideal ratio is of Eevelutions within an eCard deck. I know this build seems a bit sloppy, but quite a bit of playtesting did go into this just to try to get it on a workable level. So stay tuned for some more upcoming just for fun and rogue type decks for eCard, as well as plenty more vintage Pokemon TCG content. Social media links are in the description. Hit me up at any of those, and I will see you next video.